everyone, and welcome to our LFS webinar. This is our Meet the Professional session for our MA Film Marketing course. Lovely to welcome everybody along to our session today. We'll be running for about an hour, running from about 6 till 7. We will be doing a Q&A at the very end, so please do feel free to submit your questions in our little Q&A chat box. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our school director, Chris Orty, and our course leader for MA Film Marketing, Lia Devlin.
Hi, I'm Chris Orty. I'm the director of the film school. And in the leopard skin print, in the pink corner, Lia Devlin. Lia, just say hi, and I'll just, with my broken voice, try and introduce the rest of the panel.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Lia. I'm course leader here at London Film School. Nice to meet you all.
So welcome to this Meet the Professionals. It's a format that Lia and Simon know well. We're delighted to welcome Karina. This is our way, in a sense, of introducing aspiring students on the course to what it feels like to work in the industry, and to do so by meeting a couple of current and extremely experienced practitioners. The school takes great pride in the quality of its teaching, and it's one of the reasons it's now 70 years old and has been kind of famous for quite a long time. One of the things about it is that we don't teach in specialist silos, but we do address the whole of the film and television industry. And we've started 2 new courses in the last year because they were missing in the portfolio of courses, particularly the filmmaking courses that we ran. One was a course that was much needed in producing, and the other, which is probably the one that's closest to my heart, is this course in film marketing. Why close to my heart? Because I started life originally as a critic, and it was through marketing films, actually, and distributing films, and then becoming a sales agent, that I was able to enter the industry. And in a way, those early lessons were the lessons hardest learnt, best learnt, and most valuable to what I was then able to do afterwards. It's quite extraordinary how the producing end of the industry sometimes forgets or misunderstands the nature of the address to the audience, ultimately, and even before that, the way in which we address our colleagues in the industry, our buyers, and the elements that go into making a film. And so really marketing is at the heart of all of that. Lia joined us almost exactly a year ago after a long and very interesting career, which included running the marketing at Altitude, possibly the hippest distributor in the UK. And she's joined tonight by Simon Hewlett, who I have known for many years, and who, as fate would have it, marketed the last of what we might call the real Bond movies, because that was, if you like, the end of the franchise, the one that ended with Daniel Craig's death in the movie. And he has marketed an unbelievable number of large and small movies, some of them very, very well known indeed. And you'll see in a minute what we mean. And Karina has been very involved in the industry for many years. I think I first met her on a training program called Inside Pictures, which was a terrific industry-facing course, many distinguished alumni. And Karina's really made her career in the business to business end of the industry. And that is really the key. Long before a film ever reaches its audience, it has to find its finance and find its place with the distribution community and with the finance community. And that, without that, and the sales community. And without that, frankly, there is nothing. So, if you like, the business to business component is at the heart of the independent film engine. And what Simon's done, which is consumer-facing marketing for a huge and impressive and illustrious career, has been very much focused on global and regional and territorial marketing for major films being released around the world. So that's to draw some broad strokes around three really magnificent contributors to tonight's session. I'm speaking to you in my broken voice from the wonderful, still slightly shabby foyer of the cinema at the film school. We have our own cinemas. We have two cinemas in this wonderful building that we've been in since 1968. Upstairs, there are two sound stages. Downstairs, there's a second cinema, and there are seminar rooms in this old converted banana warehouse in the heart of Covent Garden. What a strange place to be. What a wonderful place to be. And it's now twinned with the magnificent purpose-built, purpose-designed centre above the Garden Cinema, about 250 yards away. And behind me, in fact, I'm just going to gently rotate the screen, you will see a bar that is entirely festooned with the work of our alumni. And these are all films that at some level or another were filmed, say, were either cinematographers or the editors, or in some cases, in the case of Mike Leigh, the director was a contributing maker of the film. So, and tonight, and the reason I'm sitting in this lobby is because we're currently running How to Have Sex, a film that won a significant major prize in 2023. And in about an hour, Molly Manning Walker, the extraordinary and feisty director of that film, is going to come in the door with her producer, Mary Ellen Ditch, and they're going to be talking about the career of that film from its origins through to its launch in Cannes, for which I can take no credit other than writing phonetically in English the French language speech that they gave from the stage on that wonderful afternoon and evening. Anyway, I'll love you and I will leave you and I will hand you over to Lia, who will manage the rest of this evening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Karina, for taking part. Thank you again, Simon. It's just lovely to see you yet again, and I hope this is one of many, many more occasions. And of course, thank you, Holly. And with that, I shall permanently lose my voice. Thank you very much.
Bye, Chris. Nice to see you.
Bye, Chris. Great. Well, I think hopefully some of you that have dialed into this evening's session may have also joined a session that we had a couple of weeks ago, which was more information about the course and what it is that this course covers. But for those of you that missed that, well, first of all, there is a recording of that. So if you'd like to access that, you absolutely can. But yeah, I'll just give a very quick recap of what this program is. So it's a year intensive MA program. It's new. We're currently, I think we're just over halfway through the first year with the first cohort of students. And this program is 5 modules, and we cover everything from context in terms of the ecosystem of the film industry, how films get made and sold and then released into the world. We look at marketing strategy, which obviously is at the heart and the core of this program, and where the role of marketing throughout the life cycle of a film. And then we cover everything from the kind of broader distribution landscape to research and audiences and how data is being used, how AI is reshaping certain facets of marketing. And then it's also very creative. So the current cohort are in a module at the moment that is about B2C marketing and the marketing mix and trailers and posters and social media and that kind of more creative side of things. So it's a really broad program. And I think to understand film marketing, you do need to understand the context in which that all takes place. So it's a really lively, jam-packed program. we have lots and lots of industry visitors, and really grateful to Karina and Simon, who are contributors on the course and that have come in and delivered masterclasses and taught the students. Yeah, they come from the sales agent, marketing side of things, independent distributors, and also the studio world. So as well as lots of in-person masterclasses with professionals, the course also includes a number of field trips and networking opportunities. So we've been out to Netflix. We've been to the London Film Festival. We've been to BFI South Bank. We're going to an independent distributor at the end of this module. We're going to a trailer agency. So we're getting out into the actual real world industry as well. So yeah, it's been a really lively, fun experience. I think the students will all say that they're really enjoying it and getting a lot out of it. So I think tonight it would be great to just hear from our industry contributors, and I'll let Karina and Simon talk through their background and how they got into the industry, and some of the projects that they've worked on, and bring that to life for you. In terms of my background, so very recently I worked in independent film distribution for a company called Altitude. I was there for 10 years, and before that I spent many years at Momentum Pictures, which was a kind of leading indie in the UK, and then I started my career on the studio side at Sony Pictures for a few years, and that really kind of gave me my grounding in what film marketing is, because before that I didn't even know it was a thing. I didn't know it existed. And I think one thing that has come out of loads of the industry visitors on this program is that they never set out to get into film distribution. It's just not something that people know about or know enough about or know, it is a career option. So everybody has had really different pathways into this industry, and it's been really interesting hearing their stories. I discovered I did a degree in marketing, didn't really know what to do with it, knew that I didn't want to work for brands, always loved film. And then I saw an ad in a newspaper, because that's how long ago it was, for a marketing coordinator role for a studio, and it was that moment that I just thought, wow, that's my dream job. So that's how I ended up working at Sony Pictures. But I have spent most of my career on the independent side of things, and that's very different. And part of what this program covers is the ecosystem and the differences between the studio world and then the independent world, because they are kind of worlds apart, really. Marketing principles, still apply to whatever side of the industry you're on, but it's a very different culture, I think, with different types of films. And this slide here is just a showcase of some of those films. In the 20 years that I worked in independent distribution, it was really hard to choose. But I think they've all got the common themes are they are from filmmakers that are early in their careers. So I've worked on lots of debut films or second features. And so part of the role of my job in marketing and the team's role was to really put these filmmakers on the map, and for a film to have impact, it needs to find its audience. And so that was really our role. Barry Jenkins and Moonlight, Sean Baker, Florida Project, I think that was his second feature. Talk to Me was the first feature of the Philippe brothers. Look, examples, lots of examples here. I also worked on Chloe Zhao's, I think it was her second feature, The Rider. And so, amazing now to see that she's looking like she's going to win another Oscar. And Ryan Coogler, we worked on Fruitvale Station, you know, and amazing to see all the Oscar nominations for Sinners. So being involved in filmmakers' babies, you know, at that stage is really wonderful, but obviously very challenging, because commercially these are filmmakers that aren't really known, and often these films cast actors that are also at the beginning of their career. So you know, without big IP or known talent, it can be really challenging to market these films, and it's you know, through very kind of meticulously planned and carefully orchestrated you know, strategies and campaigns. I feel like I'm doing way too much talking now, and so I think we should move on to one of our esteemed guests. I think, Simon, these are your slides, so it'd be lovely to hear about how you got into the industry, and yeah, tell us more about your career in the studio.
Yeah, I got into the industry a long time ago. So the 1987, I joined the film industry at a time when it was not clear how you could get into the film industry unless you were making films. But it was a time when video was exploding and making enormous amounts of money for the studios around the world. And I had been trained professionally as a salesman by a company called Cadbury's, but I was passionate about film, but I didn't know how to get into the film industry. And then suddenly a company called CBSFOX, which was the video arm of 20th Century Fox, were looking for salespeople. And that's how I got into the industry, initially as a salesman, but within 2 years, I made it across to the marketing side, because I always wanted to be closer to the filmmaking side of things and the creative side of things. And I just loved everything I worked on. I would have worked, and I did work 7 days a week, because I enjoyed my job so much. I was at Fox for about 18 years. I eventually went from the home entertainment side because video came along and then DVD came along, but I moved over to the theatrical side. And in those days, theatrical was the hallowed ground. If you could get onto theatrical, that's really, and you loved film, it was the place to work, because you were working on the films for the first time. You had significant budgets to work with. So I worked on things like 28 Days Later and Walk the Line. I worked on the first episode, one of the new Star Wars films, which was a blessing and a curse, because one of the reasons I love movies so much is because I saw Star Wars in 1977, and I got to work on the first of the new Star Wars films. And eventually I did, for a brief period, go back to home entertainment and was marketing across Europe, which was a terrible mistake for me because I loved theatrical. But I eventually got back onto theatrical and was running 20th Century Fox in the UK. And then next slide, in the early 2000s, Universal split from Paramount, and the head of Universal International needed to set up a new UK operation. So I joined Universal and set a brand new team up of about 30 people in the UK in Oxford Street. And we started on films like Hot Fuzz, but then had a career there that lasted nearly 20 years, worked on things like The Minions, launching Illumination, Fast and Furious, which went from being a very small car movie to being a billion-dollar franchise, musicals like Les Mis, Mamma Mia. I mean, I think in total, I'm somewhere between 450 and 500 films I've worked on the marketing campaigns for. So, and working for studios like Universal and Illumination, but also working title, whose biggest UK studio, Focus Features, which is a speciality arm of Universal, and then Blumhouse, who was specializing in micro-budget horror movies. So really working on a lot of very, very different products. I've worked at a territory level. Favorite job was being marketing director for the UK at 20th Century Fox. But I've also worked at an international level where I was running all of the marketing for Universal everywhere outside of Canada and the US, which meant I got to travel and see different cultures and work with different marketing people. So I've seen lots of different aspects of marketing and worked on many movies, and it was a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thank you, Simon. And then Karina, if you could tell us about your career.
Sure. So, just as Simon said, when Universal and Paramount split up, I was the first employee of Paramount after that split. And that's really where I started my journey. I kind of going back a little bit. So I studied economics, and I think my family was hoping that I'll be working in that area. But I then did master in media and film studies. And marketing was really the kind of the thread, what I enjoyed while I did my economics degree and what I enjoyed in media and film studies. So I kind of knew that marketing is where I'm going, and film was my passion since I was quite young. And so I managed to get a job at Paramount and never looked back really. But I must say that actually kind of liking Excel spreadsheets and feeling comfortable with numbers, which is, I tend to keep it as a secret, but it's been quite handy because even though marketing tends to kind of feel like a very creative field, but actually it has a lot of business and strategic element, and understanding the numbers, I would say, is quite important part of the overall field of marketing. But yeah, so I started at Paramount, and I originally joined the kind of more indie label within Paramount, which was called Paramount Vantage, working on films like No Country for Old Men and Babel and Noah Baumbach films. So kind of the more independent films within the studio. And I was based in the head office in London, overseeing all the territories. So Paramount France and Paramount UK and Paramount Japan and so on. And as there were less and less Paramount Vantage titles, I moved across to work also on Paramount main titles like Transformers, and then DreamWorks animation titles like Kung Fu Panda and Flashed Away and so on. And I loved working on marketing those films, and the budgets were quite healthy. And as Simon mentioned, I also got to travel quite a lot and seeing how, certain films were released or marketed in one way in certain territories and then quite different in other territories. And I already started to understand how it's the same film, but there's a need to tailor it to different cultures, different languages, and different audiences. And then we had an internal screening of Jackass 3 in 3D. It was a working cut. But on that day, I knew that my time at Paramount is finished. Because already by then, while I was working on fairly mainstream films, I was balancing it off in my free time with obscure black and white Finnish silent films. But when I watched Jackass 3 in 3D, I knew that, my soul is not there. So I moved to the independent sector, and as Lia mentioned, those worlds, they collide sometimes, but they really they exist in parallel, and the ecosystems are quite different. So I moved on to work for a production and sales company called Independent, and they were in post-production on Lynn Ramsey's We Need to Talk About Kevin. And that's really where my journey started, where I had to take a DCP of the film and go to Paris and screen it to Cannes artistic director, which I've never done before, but I showed enough confidence and reassurance that I can do it. And I guess since then I always worked in a more independent art house sector. And when we think about the difference also in marketing in those different ecosystems, I remember at Paramount, we would take about 9 to 12 months to start work on a poster for us to need to launch it. While when I joined Independent, we were launching a film that was in pre-production, and we needed to create a sales poster. And I was told that I have 10 days to brief, to get it designed, to find the poster that we like, to get it approved and have it finished within 10 days. And I was sure that they're, just testing me, because it cannot be possible. But it is possible. And that's really how, the more independent sector operates. Sometimes you only have 10 days to create the poster, ideally longer. but there are times when you have to operate quite fast. But the whole approval process, for example, is much quicker, and you have closer relationship with filmmakers. So I think that is more organic and faster flowing, which I also like. So I was at Independent for 5 years, working on films like Startup, which was David Mackenzie's film, and then different documentaries like Exit Through the Gift Shop and Ai Weiwei Never Sorry. A lot of those films had festival premieres, and then we would sometimes sell them to independent distributors, sometimes to more kind of mainstream studios. But just maybe to step away and explain the kind of the sales agent side, which, as Lia mentioned, you learn a lot about it on the course. The sales agent is the middle man or woman or company that sit between the filmmakers and the financiers and the distributors, who then will be distributing the film in different territories to audiences. So the sales agents are brokering the deals. But really, the role is much more exponential. You would be doing marketing that is marketing to distributors to attract them to buy the film. The role of a sales agent is also submit the film to festivals, take it to markets, and so on. So it's not like a quick transaction in and out. A sales agent engaged in the journey of the film for about 2 years, from script stage until all the local releases. So yeah, going from studio to doing marketing within a production and sales company. And that's really where I stayed. And my speciality has always been doing a B2B marketing, which is business to business, where you already at script stage, you think about who is the end audience for the film, but you're also thinking, how we're going to market the film to potential financiers, partners, and distributors. So it's that in-between marketing. Hopefully this makes sense, but you can learn about it on the course. And then after my time at Independent, I joined Altitude and I worked alongside Lia. So I worked in the international sales arm of Altitude while Lia was on the distribution side, and we often collaborated together. So on films like Rocks and Asif Kapadia's Diego Maradona and Calm with Horses. So I would come on board at script stage and kind of mastermind that B2B campaign. And then when it was time to start thinking about the B2C campaign, we would collaborate and think about the marketing to audiences. So again, I was there for about 5 years. And what was amazing about Altitude is we did such a wide range of films, from art house to high profile documentaries. And back then, actually, it was an amazing momentum for documentaries. It was about 10 years ago when a lot of cinema goers will go to the cinema to watch documentaries. So it was kind of, I would say, the heydays. And it's still the case, but I kind of a small observation, I guess. A lot of the audiences who seek documentaries tend to watch them, in the comfort of their home. And it's harder to get people out to cinemas to watch documentary unless it's something extremely cinematic done by a big director and so on. So there needs to be a real reason. And then after Altitude, I worked on a project for Secret Cinema, which was a Star Wars project. I knew actually very little about Star Wars. So I was hired not because I'm Star Wars expert, but because I kind of understand the format of immersive cinema. And for those that don't know, Secret Cinema is an immersive theater / film advertising organization that bring films to life. And in this occasion, it was Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. And we worked very closely with Lucas Films, with Fox and Disney, to build a full set, an immersive set for people to come and watch the film in the world of Star Wars. So that was really fun and always very interesting to kind of see where film meets theater, meets events in real life. And most recently, I spent a few years at a company called Anton, who were originally film financiers. So they would write the checks for company slates or for specific films. For example, they financed the original Paddington and Greenland. And then a few years ago, they've started also doing production in-house and sales. So I've joined in to do marketing and publicity, where again, my journey would start at script stage, and we would start investigating really who is the audience for this film, what are the kind of the marketing hooks, what are the comps, what is the positioning, and launch it to the market already then. And just to mention, again, this is something you learn more about on the course, but when we say market, if you're not making a film within a studio system, so a company that fully finances and produces it, the independent sector has a market where sales agents sell films to distributors, and at events like Berlin Film Festival and Cannes Film Festival, alongside the festival, there's always a market where those sales agents and distributors meet and buy films. So we would sometimes sell films at script stage, and then some of the profits can be used to finance the film. So it's part of the finance plan. And at Anton, I worked on films like Femme, which was a London set queer revenge thriller, Mother Instinct, Memoir for Snail. It's an Australian animation that was Oscar nominated. And then most recently Fuse, which is the David Mackenzie most recent film, which is due to release in the UK this month. So quite nice range of kind of, I guess, bigger films and smaller films, but always staying in that early stages of making the film, and then throughout production, and then handing over to a distributor to do the consumer-facing release. Yeah,
Thank
hope
you.
that made sense.
Thank you, Karina. So on that then, so in terms of business to consumer marketing, question for you, Simon. When people think about film marketing, the things that spring to mind are posters and trailers, and there's a sort of idea that that is film marketing. It's just about that. But how would you describe it, and what more to it is there?
Well, marketing to me is an umbrella of different things. There's it's sort of it's a group of people that are all working towards creating an identity for a film, creating demand for a film, and connecting it with the right audience out in the world. But it's as you say, it's media. So where you actually spend your advertising, it's definitely creative, which is posters, trailers. It's all the materials that interpret the movie in short form or as a print or in digital form. But then you need to get those things out into the world. So there's a media side, things where you actually have people that specialize in buying media and putting media plans where they're looking to target the right people to connect them to the movie. There's a publicity team. It always used to frustrate me that in theatrical, people thought theatrical and marketing were publicity and marketing were two different things, but publicity sits under marketing, is part of marketing. And the role of publicity has evolved enormously over the last sort of 10 years. But it's principally about creating awareness and using the different components of the film, from the talent to the director, to get out into the world in a non-paid format, creating premieres, creating events, working with influencers, working with people that connect the movie with an audience, getting great word of mouth, all those sort of things. There's a promotions arm where where teams will work with large promotional partners, say a Coca-Cola or an Audi or a BMW, to use their marketing money to help you promote your movie. There's digital. Actually, 15 years ago was a separate thing, but it's now integrated into every department. But every film will come with its own social strategy, its own digital strategy, its own digital community. Studios and independents are very keen to develop communities that they can exploit long term, so you can come back to again and again, whether it's for Fast and Furious, where you have an audience around the world that you can talk to directly about the movies, or it may be a particular film star, or it may be a particular genre. those things are very valuable now to actually have audiences that you can go back to, and they need constant nurturing and they need looking after 12 months of the year. There's a creative team that will work on all the assets a movie needs. There's a creative production team whose job it is to create those assets in all the different formats that are needed for all the different advertisers and social platforms. And there's a partnerships team which is working with the likes of exhibition, working with if there's a soundtrack, working with the soundtrack company. If it's the movies come from a book, then working with the book company to reach out to the audience to read it as a book and try and get them into the cinema. And partnerships tends to work on things like interactive, immersive. So actually what Karina just said with The Empire Strikes Back, but coming up with ways that people can connect with the film in a more meaningful way. So those are some of the different components. But sitting on top of that will probably be a marketing director who's trying to coordinate all these things and make sure that they're all pushing in the same direction. A marketing campaign that doesn't have a direction could be like a chariot with 5 horses running in different directions, and which obviously gets very messy very quickly. So it's really about understanding who your audience is, what you're trying to sell to that audience, and then all of those different components use their different ways of reaching the audience to do that and achieve that objective.
Brilliant. And I'll come to you with this question in a minute, Karina, but whilst we're on you, Simon, what would you say? Obviously, you've just described so many different facets of marketing, and each one, requires a certain type of maybe personality or skill set. But like broadly speaking, what do you think? Where do you see people do well in marketing? What sort of skills or mindsets do you think do well in this field?
The different roles definitely have different character traits. There are a certain sort of individual that goes into publicity, and publicity it's the role I wouldn't want to do because it's one of the toughest. It's constant firefighting. It's dealing with difficult individuals and probably nice individuals, and it's something that you're constantly reacting to. So you need to be someone that's thick-skinned, thinks on your feet, adaptive, able to say something that might be a negative and turn it into a positive, finding ways to interpret a movie's positioning in a way that, we live in a world now where everybody has an opinion on things, and publicity's job has just become 100 times harder because of that. So I think publicity people do need to have that sort of very entrepreneurial, constantly on, and very switched on attitude. Marketing people, if you're a marketing manager or a product manager, they tend to be better planners. They're probably more involved in spreadsheets. As Karina said, I think you need to be across the budget of a film. There's definitely a creative element to that because they tend to be the ones that are most involved in the creative materials for a movie, the post to the trailer, those sort of things. Media planners tend to be more analytical and left brain, more data driven, much more audience centric. Because really they're building the bridges where we spend our money to reach an audience. Promotional people tend to be sort of very big characters, great communicators, ideas people, because they're really reaching out to companies and partners that may not understand the film industry, but they're trying to give them access to the film industry and explain how a film brand will work well with a blue chip brand. I think the one thread for every single role within film marketing is enthusiasm. If you want the rocket fuel to survive in this industry, enthusiasm matters. A passion for film really matters. You can work in the industry and not love movies, but you go further if you really love. If it's what you wake up and you enjoy, if you love watching movies when you're not working, having that passion and enthusiasm. I'm not an academic person. The reason I got as far as I did was enthusiasm and my love of movies. And once you have that, then I think you tend to stand out within this industry. And I still think that's the case. I think enthusiastic, passionate executives, whether they work in the independent side or they work in the studio side, they go further because they'll do anything they can to make something work.
Brilliant. Thank you. That was great. And Karina, same question to you.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Simon on enthusiasm and passion to film. I think also I would encourage to keep this passion, because I've noticed a lot of people who work in film, might not go to watch a film during the day because whatever the structure of their company, and it feels like, you're sneaking out of work and da-da-da. But I think there's need to reframe it. And the more films you watch, especially in marketing, the better you will be at your job, because you're then able to look at other film campaigns, and having hopefully watched the film, look at the box office, and you get the 360. Otherwise, it's just purely kind of theoretical. If you haven't watched the film itself, you can look at the campaign. You might have a thought on the trailer. You might look at the box office. You might be geeky with numbers. But watching the film actually is the crucial part of seeing what's happening in the industry. And then, not to mention that when you're working on your marketing for your film, you're able to think of comps, which is a big part of the marketing. So, being a cinephile is a massive plus, and actually keeping that enthusiasm going is crucial. I will also add, any soft skills. I feel like when I look at CVs, it's less about, kind of the academic side of things, but it's about meeting the person and seeing their energy, their dynamic. I'm not saying everyone needs to be a yes person, because there are also issues with that. But having a certain energy and being a team player, I would say, because marketing is so connected to so many other aspects in the industry, that you need to be able to network and work in teams. And then maybe empathy. I would say that's good to have anyway. But in order to be able to think of your audience and try to fit into their shoes, that could be quite useful.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And actually, nice segue on the empathy bit to working with filmmakers, and what you would say about that, as advice to anybody thinking about coming onto this program. You obviously, on your side of things, work with filmmakers really early on, and they'll have a real vested interest in how this film is going to be marketed to the industry and how it's going to be positioned and so on. What would you say people need to have in mind when working with filmmakers?
I think it's important to have collaborative spirit, and I worked with all sorts of kind of business people, financiers, and producers. Some who really well wear these soft gloves with directors, and some who push the directors away from the business side. But I think overall, it's important to be collaborative and make the directors feel that we're in it together. And at the same time, to remember that it's their baby. And at some point, them letting this baby go into the world can be, quite difficult part. So I'm being empathetic to this. I mean, some filmmakers can be also difficult. So no, setting boundaries and knowing where to put the foot down is equally important. So it's kind of well-balanced approach. But I think being collaborative is crucial, and being transparent and having their trust from early on. I think if you can get the director to trust you from early on, your journey together can be much more positive, with some hiccups, and there are always ups and downs, but overall more positive.
Okay, thank you. Simon, what about you working with filmmakers? What was your experience on the studio side?
Actually, Karina made a point earlier on, which was, and you did as well, when you work with filmmakers when they're making their first film or their second film, and certainly worked with a lot of those, and they're the most fun to work with, because they haven't really become cynical about the film industry or marketing, and they're more open to trusting you, and trust is a massive part of it. It's explaining to the filmmaker and the producer, and producer and filmmaker, director and producer come hand in hand. Producers are incredibly important to you because they're the managing director of the movie. They're the ones that were the first in and the ones that will be the last out, and they tend to know where everything is. So they're the ones that you really need to get on side. I found that I was always surprised, the many filmmakers that we work with, even the most experienced ones, there were often times I just realized he didn't really understand what marketing was. They were very aware of the poster, they were very aware of the trailer. That's what they were very focused on. But I never had, other than one particular person, I never had any filmmaker ask me about the media plan for their film. Yet that's probably where most of the budget would go. But I never had anybody ask me, how much are you spending on this and where are you spending it against? And I only had one person do that, and that was just mind blowing when they did. So it's explaining to them the marketing process, what their part of that is, explaining to them why you're positioning the film in a certain way. Because again, as you guys have said, the film is something they're very close to. They've worked on it for many years, and suddenly you're expressing it maybe in a different way to what they see. Filmmakers are the worst trailer makers, probably except for Ridley Scott. They don't know how to make trailers because they can't cut something so important down into 2 minutes, but they have very strong opinions about a trailer and what should be in it and what shouldn't. So there's lots of hand holding. I'd say you learn never to say no, because if you say no to a filmmaker, it creates a barrier. So I learned from some brilliant people how you make tough decisions without ever creating an obstacle of the word no. And always with the filmmaker, let them feel that nothing is set in stone and everything is changeable right into the last minute, by which time hopefully you've got them to a point where you can go together. But it's not that we're working against them, it's just that reaching audiences and getting them to come in to see their movie, there's just things that need to be done that sometimes filmmakers, I think, don't appreciate or don't like. They certainly hated digital when it first came in and putting stuff onto smartphones and things like that. They found that very difficult. But when it's good, it's the most wonderful relationship and the most fun. When it's hard work, it's hard work. Very hard work.
Whilst we're on that, and this is a really difficult question, Simon, because you've worked across so many films, but if you could choose a favorite campaign, what would it be?
I don't know. I probably have, because I forget sometimes things, and then I see a film on Letterboxd, or I'm looking at Prince Charles and I see a movie. I forget sometimes some of the things I worked on, and then when you see them, all these memories come back from that particular thing. I loved working on Hot Fuzz because Edgar Wright it was his second film, and Simon Pegg and Nick Frost were great fun, and we were working in the UK, and we were really ambitious and bold with that, and I felt they were very collaborative with us. I loved working on Mamma Mia because that was working with people from the theatre side, and at the time, the theatre side were worried that making a film of Mamma Mia would kill the stage show. So there was a real trust there in us that this was going to, and obviously now everyone knows that if you make a film of a stage show, the stage show just gets bigger. But that was an extraordinary experience because we were trying to replicate what worked in the theatre with Mamma Mia, but in a cinema. And at one moment we thought it wasn't going to work. We had the Odeon Leicester Square for 4 weeks, which we were trying to fill it for 4 weeks, and we made it look like a church. And we arrogantly thought we could do it, and we were the first in the world to launch. And oh no, sorry, we had it for a week. That was what we had it exclusively for a week, and we just thought Mamma Mia fans will turn up in their droves. And it took a while for them to warm up to the film, but when they did, it was a religious experience. And that film went on to became the biggest UK film of all time, beating Titanic, which was obviously a good thing. But that was amazing to work with. Yeah, we kept spending money for 9 months, and we eventually crept past Titanic, which was brilliant and an amazing experience. But once you knew the word of mouth was there, because people were coming back again and again, so we just kept marketing it, and finding new ways to talk about it. That was an extraordinary experience. We had to renegotiate new terms with all the exhibitors because we just kept going. And yeah, 9 months later, it beat Titanic, which was great because Titanic was Fox and that was my old company. So we took the record away. It didn't last very long because Avatar came along and took it. But for a little while, it was a good moment. So yeah, that was probably one of my favorite experiences. But I don't know, it's just you probably have the same. You suddenly think, oh, I remember that. Something will happen, a noise or a sound or a music or something, and all these memories will come back of, things that you were doing on that particular film. And you do get very immersed in worlds and you become very focused on certain things for a period of time. And it's just your life. And then you move on to the next thing, into the next thing. So, but I remember those being very positive.
Yeah, I remember people going to see Mamma Mia like multiple times, weren't they? I remember a press story about somebody that had been to see it. I can't remember the number of times now, but it was like a crazy number
Yeah,
of
we
times.
had people that had seen it 50 something times. We had
Yeah,
people
yeah.
and that was the campaign. It was how many times have you seen it? We had
Okay.
stories of women going, obviously drinking a lot of wine before they arrived, got into the cinema, started singing. Somebody was sick on somebody in front of them. And they were having such a good time. The person in front, even though they were covered in, they stayed for the rest of the film. I mean, and all those things became press stories, and we just kept perpetuating this. If you haven't seen it, why haven't you seen it? And if you've only seen it 5 times, why haven't you seen it 10 times? And it just seemed people just wanted to go and have fun, and it worked. Actually, another one was the Full Monty. The Full Monty was like that, and the Full Monty came out when Princess Diana died, and the country was in just miserable. And that film came along, and it should have only done 7 or 8 million at the box office in the UK, and it did 52 million. And that became the biggest film of all time. And then Titanic beat that, and then Mamma Mia beat that. But that was a word of mouth. People just wanted to go and be together and laugh. And that was another film that ran for like 9 months. That was a great experience.
Amazing, thank you. I think that is one of the most rewarding things about this, this world of work, is that when films work and they have this huge cultural impact, and it's like the conversation of the moment is amazing, isn't it? It's slightly sort of intoxicating in a way. But yeah, it's brilliant to look back on it. Karina, what about you? What's your favorite campaign?
I guess I have to look back to Paramount, where I did genuinely do the B2C side of things. I remember we had a lot of fun with Kung Fu Panda. It was really the kind of the start of digital, and we did all sorts of Yahoo. Sounds so old school, but Yahoo takeover in 20 countries, and even the logistic to synchronize it was so new and so exciting, and seeing it happening. It was really the kind of the start where we would spend ridiculous amount of money on digital. And back then it would be a takeover without kind of targeting to specific audiences. It would be a complete takeover of the page, and it needed to be integrated properly. So that was really exciting. I think there were quite few moments in time at my time in Paramount where we definitely had the budget and we had the right people to think slightly outside the box, and be ahead of the game with technology and digital world. And then on the more independent side of things, I loved working on Rocks. And it's less on the kind of B2C campaign side, because by the time the film, as you know, Lia, because you released it, but by the time the film was about to release, COVID hit. So that was slightly unfortunate. But Rocks was a film where most of the cast were unprofessional. And we started the kind of the B2B campaign on set with those unprofessional, non-professional young actresses, creating buzz around them to then hopefully create excitement with distributors. So that was really new and exciting. and then to bring them, because again, part of the B2B marketing, really, that's where it crosses into B2C, is the festival world premiere. So bringing them to Toronto and seeing the response both from the industry and public was very exciting. So I think that's kind of really crucial moment when we would have been working on a film for a long time and it's finally finished and we're releasing it into the world in a world premiere. That's very special momentum, both from business side of things, hopefully to, you know, make the sales and so on, but also in terms of building that audience. It's the first time the film meets the audience moment.
But also launching the careers of those
Yeah.
teenage girls that have now gone on to, you know, to
It's
be
incredible. I love following them on Instagram and hearing the stories. Yeah, it's exciting.
And then I think we've only got a few more minutes, but I've got to ask, you know, from looking at like this year's awards films, you know, the films that have been nominated for BAFTAs and Oscars. Simon, do you know, is there a campaign out there or a couple of films or whatever that you are admiring the campaign from afar?
If I'm honest, probably not. No. I thought Begonia was a very difficult film to market because it has a very difficult title. It's such a brilliant film, and I wish Jesse Plemons was in the running for an Oscar, because I mean, that guy just deserves at some point recognition because he's incredible. I thought Timothy Chalamet's movie benefited from him being so invested in the campaign. And I think his publicity tour for that really helped that movie. But he's definitely becoming an actor now, a little bit like DiCaprio, that if he's in it, people are very interested in it. I think Sinners, given how long ago it came out, I think that was a film that caught people by surprise, but then quickly caught up. I thought the campaign for that was very mainstream, but for what is a very layered movie and a film that I think the word of mouth on was very, very strong. Again, it's one of those things. If you try and describe it to people, I think getting the positioning for that film would have been very, very difficult because it's a lot of things and it's not just. And also, you don't want to give away ultimately, you know, the twists in the movie. So I think of the sort of big three front runners. I really, you know. Oh, and then I suppose One Battle After Another. Again, it's one of those films that probably rested an awful lot on who's in it and who's directed it, and didn't really try and tell you what it's about. I heard so many people ask me what is it about, and all they say is, I heard it was long. And it is one of those, you say you should go and see it. It's great. And the other thing is people watching it at the cinema. I did watch Hamnet at home. I found watching that really difficult. I think I needed to be in the cinema to watch it, but I just couldn't watch everything in the cinema. Anyone that watched it in the cinema loved it. I mean, it's a difficult film to love because it's quite harrowing, but I think the campaign for that made something that was a very difficult subject matter, and they really eventized it. And I was very aware that that film became the film people were saying, have you seen? And it definitely is a cinema movie. It's not one to sit at home and wait to see. It's you need an audience there around you to get through that. So,
and
yeah,
for the record, Simon, you watched it at home because you're a BAFTA member, not because you pirated
because
it.
I'm an Academy member. So yeah, not because I was pirating it. No, they stream the films to us, and we need to watch. There's a lot of movies you need to watch. I was going to see it at the cinema. There's just too many films that you've got to get through, and it wasn't. There was others I wanted to see at the cinema a little bit more than Hamnet, but I wish I had, because I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. What about you, Karina?
I have to support Simon on Begonia. I love this film, and Jesse definitely deserves recognition for it. What an outstanding performance. I did think that the campaign, I love the campaign, but it was a little bit too niche. As we know, and this is heads up to anyone who is doing or will be doing marketing for film, you don't mess up with Yorgos. He's probably one of the very few directors who will dictate the marketing campaign and end up choosing the designer. Everyone else you can, kind of run the show a little bit more, but not with Yorgos. So I'm sure this is how Yorgos envisaged it. And yeah, I love this campaign and I love the film. In terms of talent that showed up that Simon, you mentioned, I thought that Alexander Skarsgård's dedication to doing the tour and all the events and screenings for Pillion was incredible. I mean, it's a debut film, and he showed up in Cannes and he showed up at a lot of festivals. And someone else could have thought, okay, my job here is done. Off I go to do my next film. But it was incredible to see him show up at so many Q&As, press junkets, and premieres. And I think that definitely has amplified the film. And not only he showed up, he was so playful with his outfits and so on. And I thought that the campaign the Picture House did for Pillion was great. Great trailer, and definitely a film to watch in the cinema, maybe not with your mother. And then in terms of, because I know you mentioned Timothy, I will have to give a shout out to A24. I know by now it sounds a cliche, A24 campaigns are so great, blah, blah, blah. But there is something that they do that really stands out for me. And it's, they don't spoon feed audiences. They assume that audiences are smart enough and curious enough. And in their campaigns, I feel like they just give enough tease for audience to seek out information or images to meet them somewhere in the middle. So they're kind of not for the lazy ones, I guess. They want the audience to do a bit of work. But it was interesting to see how they were definitely thinking outside the box with their Marty Supreme campaign. And, one of the first marketing pieces was 18 minutes video that looked like a marketing Zoom call, onto which Timothée Chalamet came on to, present his vision, that went insanely viral. And then them launching the merchandise, and so many people were buying the merchandise before they even watched the film. So there's definitely a cult thing going on, but I just like how they don't spoon feed and kind of reiterate the film and recut the film into repeated social media assets that is kind of a little bit more standard. So yeah, I thought the Marty Supreme campaign was pretty amazing.
All right, thank you. Holly, I'm really conscious that we may be a little, are we over time, or have we got time for...
We're a little bit over time, but we do have a couple of questions. I mean, just to follow on from what was mentioned there, and just to name drop a little bit, our LFS alumni includes the editor of Begonia and also the editor of Hamnet, who's actually going to be joining us for our filmmaking webinar on Thursday. So, across all of those awards this year and previous years, we've got our LFS alumni kind of fingers in lots of pies there. So just to mention that bit. But we do have a couple of questions. Michael O'Donnell, he has asked, what did last year's class participate in when it came to collaborating with other students, with the other student body? Did they help market any of the school projects? And actually, when you say last year, it actually would be our current cohort. Is that right, Lia?
Yeah, so yeah, it's the course, the cohort that are currently doing the course and are in the 4th module of the course at the moment. The answer is no, there hasn't been collaboration with the filmmaking students. I think this was something that was earlier sort of touted as a possibility. We encourage networking outside of the curriculum, and students have indeed, collaborated with other students on other programs in their own projects, but there isn't it's not part of the curriculum at the moment. All the MA programs, they are so busy working on their own assignments and their own work that actually getting them to align doesn't quite work. However, what I will say is that the MA marketing students are working on some real world live film projects. So we're working with a couple of indie distributors on films that have yet to be released in the UK. And the marketing cohort are devising the strategy for those films. So they're doing the competitor analysis, they're identifying the target audience, they're working out the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats, creative pillars, positioning. And so they're doing that strategy work, and then they're having the opportunity to meet with those marketing teams and present to them their strategy and their thoughts. So yes, we're actually choosing to work on real world feature length projects with distributors.
And that, I think, it probably speaks to the kind of the industry as a whole a little bit more in terms of working for real projects, working in the real world. I think across the board at LFS, we train in screenwriting and producing and filmmaking across directing, editing, sound. And I think marketing is one of those areas which is different from the rest in that people go into jobs. There's that pathway into actual industry as opposed to a freelance career. I think that's probably one of the main differences. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is the case. So all the other programs are, creative fields where people generally will go on to be to work for themselves, in a freelance capacity. But marketing, there is a whole world and a broad spectrum of pathways into different parts of the industry. So yeah, it's fully vocational. And for that reason, professional development is a really important part of the course that starts, during the first week. And we do things like, developing presentation skills. We're doing a CV workshop. The students go to a number of networking events. They're encouraged to connect with any, industry professionals that come in on LinkedIn. I'm currently facilitating work experience and work placements during their Easter break. So they're about to come into a 4-week break, and a number of them have already found work experience positions with film distributors, which is brilliant. So yeah, the vocational element of this is what makes it distinctive at the school.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. And one very, very last question, and we'll wrap it up. But Michael O'Donnell has asked, Chris mentioned last year that integrating AI was important in the new course structure. How did that pan out? Is that part of the course? I mean, good memory if you remember that from being mentioned last year.
Well, AI gets discussed all the time. Every week we start with looking at the trades and reading the news and watching the headlines and tracking real world projects. And of course, AI is a hot topic and has been for a while and will continue to be. And it's, a controversial topic. But yeah, we talk about AI and how it is shaping marketing, what it's being used for, what are the challenges of it, what are the opportunities of it. So yeah, that's an ongoing discussion, and it's actually part of the current module assignment is to analyze, evaluate AI.
Brilliant stuff. Well, that's everything. We've run over time, so that's always good. It always means that there's lots to talk about. But thank you very much. Thank you, Karina. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Leah, and everybody who's joined us for this webinar. If anybody has any other questions, please do get in touch with us. admissions@lfs.org.uk, and we'll get back to you. But that's it for us for now. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.